obelisk. The obelisk is the key.
Wait. Shh. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Got no audio. Here we go.
City.
I'm in Washington.
All right, shh. Be quiet. We're live. Good evening, and welcome to the Obelisk. We've already started without you guys. Tonight's guest is Melissa Dawn. Originally born in Canada as a Gen Xer in the 70s, Melissa has spent her life collecting ghostly folklore. She recently moved to the U.S. to live with her amazing husband, and rest assured she'll be investigating and gathering the local lore. Melissa, welcome. We miss you. Welcome back.
Yes.
Hi. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We've had you on a few times.
We had to get over the chaos of 2020.
Whatever.
The first
chaos.
3 years of hell.
Yes, indeed. Well, I love that you have this new show and it's all spooky.
Well, I haven't podcast for a while, so I'm rebuilding. So guys, I don't have the same audience I had before, but hopefully it'll build up. And I was all over the place. I didn't know what I wanted to do, conspiracy theory. And I'm like, Melissa, you just always collect stories. So why don't you just do something like that? And it's easy and you like it.
You built a really huge Twitter following.
It's so political though. It's not like most of my Twitter is so political and about politics. I don't know if that is. I mean, I can get people from them, but I don't think that audience is very much into this. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's highly politically charged, most of my followers.
You have been all over the board though. I mean, I think last time, weren't you doing like talking about cults and all that?
Yeah. It was, which was interesting to do. I'd been researching personality disorders for a long time. Psychology was a big interest of mine, but it was, we got into it. I think the whole 2020 and the pandemic and seeing a lot of stuff going on, I just wanted to look at how we're controlled and manipulated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. And we are.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think we'll ever not be. I'm not suggesting that we have to never be controlled, but I think the control and influence can be more beneficial to us, can be a good influence rather than some nefarious, crazy, end of days sort of cult-like crazy.
Well, that's what we got going now. I want to hear about this whole situation, the stuff you can talk about, but I love that you're in America now. And what are your thoughts about being here? I mean, obviously you moved for love, so that's a good thing, but what are your thoughts? It's a kind of a wild time to be here.
So it is a wild time to be here, but I think it's the right time to be here. I believe I'm here for a reason. I'm Canadian. I lived on Vancouver Island. It's different. Living here there's not, culturally, I'm not in some kind of culture shock. It's not like moving to, Spain or I don't know, somewhere else. But Canadian is just so much more reserved and kind of docile. America's like, yeah, everything's bigger, right? And they have a better national identity, I think, than Canadians do. And it's been interesting. I mean, I live in Utah, so like 6 or 7 out of 10 people are Mormon here, which is different, but it's still, it's great. I just wish that I could go visit my son who's in university. He's all grown up now. And last time I talked to you guys, he was probably a teenager, young kid, but he's on his own. And so the only thing that I I sort of lament over is not being able to leave the country yet because I don't have a travel pass to go visit my son. That's about it. Otherwise, I am not in a big culture shock. It's like, oh, I was talking to Americans every day anyways, online, nonstop, and I had a lot in common with a lot of Americans.
Yeah, I like Utah despite the church there, but I like the country there. And the state has, it's unique compared to a lot of the rest of the states.
Mhm.
They are very much into their rights there. So there are some places that are wild here where there's a lot of really heavy control, and it's getting heavier. So you are in kind of a good spot despite the Mormon aspect.
Yes, and I hear that it's sort of a hot spot for strangeness.
Yes, there's all kinds of woo, girl. Jerry, I
good.
saw you were going to talk and I interrupted.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, it's all in the same vein of what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Melissa
I was going to
moving.
say there's not a lot of light between Canadians and Americans culturally. I think you guys talk weird. That's about it. Against an A.
I grew up with, I'm
A
from the
boot.
north.
A boot.
A boot.
A boot. I'm from the north, so where I grew up, we got Canadian TV. It was just normal. So Red Green Show and all the Canadian stuff.
I grew up on Second City TV, SCTV. Like every week I watch that show. I mean,
Yeah.
Canadian comedy was a big chunk of my life, so it's always been normal to me.
You know that Doug and Bob show?
Yeah.
Like, in Canada, you have to have like so much percentage be Canadian content. Like, that's the rules, that's the law,
Oh, really?
That's how you have to do it. And I think that's why, you could correct me if I'm wrong, that's why they created that show as like mocking, because they were wanting them to have Canadian content. They'll say, okay, we'll give you Canadian content. So they created that skit to be the Canadian content part of the show.
Because I believe it was what is it, CBC? Is that the public broadcasting up there?
Yeah.
So CBC, actually, that show was on CBC for a long time. It was like a public broadcasting show.
Yeah. I know. I used to watch it with my grandmother.
I love
That's
it.
like in the 80s, like long time ago. And it's like,
and those are reruns. Yeah, for sure.
The 3 channels with your rabbit ears.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. we had 5 in Chicago. Ooh.
Ooh.
Fancy.
We were fancy.
That is fancy. That's fancy.
So tell us about collecting ghost stories for so long, because that's what you're doing right now is retelling stories and getting into all this kind of fun stuff. I love that you're in this territory.
Well, I was actually originally born on the east coast of Canada in New Brunswick, in a city called St. John, which is one of the oldest incorporated cities in Canada. And so I lived in an old Victorian house, and I was just surrounded by that kind of folklore and folk tales. So I grew up interested in ghosts, and the house I lived in had some paranormal happenings and strange stuff. And I was around a lot of strange stuff. So I think I had a lot of collections. And originally I started in this sort of field before I even got into podcasting, designing magazines for an online blog and writing for an online blog about paranormal and Fortean stuff. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to create an archive and just collect stuffs. And I also have on my website of that archive, the place is called Ghostly Archives, ghostlyarchives.com. I also have what's called the Vault, and it's a collection of stuff that I'd done in the past. So for people to use or access for whatever they want, and then put new stuff. But I've got a lot of stories that, it's not like well-known stories, but it's, maybe something new, a little fresher, things that I've heard from people or collected or recorded, and it's sitting on my computer. And I thought, well, I'm in Utah and it's also a hot spot, so I can keep collecting and just, maybe it'll be of use one day as some kind of, I don't know, historical or some kind of context for entertainment. I don't know what it will become.
So as you're telling these stories and digging from your archive, so I haven't had a chance to check out. I see you've got 3, it looks like, up now.
2. yeah, there's an intro. The intro one, there's no story there, but I just have 2 up because I just started it. So I have 2 stories up and I'm doing one, but I also want to have some roundtables so people can talk. So it's not all just pre-recorded, because I kind of pre-record them like, so it's well edited and polished.
Yeah.
But I also want to have some roundtables that are more looser and you get to hear other people's thoughts and stuff like that. So maybe once a month, it can be hard to get things scheduled out, but having people on and talking about whatever's in the now, and then having the pre-recorded ones kind of be stories from history or collections, and a little mixture.
Yeah. I like where this is going a lot, and I've got you lined up to listen. I was just so busy in this week trying to get my own stuff done. But well, first of all, I was excited to see that you're back, by the way. Melissa's back.
I'm back.
And so this kind of stuff I love a lot. Are you going to have guests on? So you're doing roundtables, but are you going to actually have some guests, like one-on-one, and have interviews and all that?
Either roundtables or guests. Anybody who has a book or anything they want to promote or come on, you go to the website, ghostlyarchives.com, and the contact email information's all there. So either which way, we can stream it live. I have a good following on X, so I can share it, and most of the exposure is going to be on X. I don't know if you guys found it, but YouTube is just atrocious these days. I can't get my channel's just sort of, it just can't get the numbers that it used to. It's so bizarre. But I get, I had a guy talking about UFOs on about a month ago before I started this up, and we got like 6,000 views. So it was nice.
Wow.
Because I share it around. Yeah, I shared it around in some groups and some people that I know, and it just gets that exposure. So I'm going to be, if I do the show or do guess, it's live stream, we'll get it up on X because I know we won't be censored.
That's great. I left Twitter when it was still Twitter, and I don't think I'm going back, but I had to move. I've never used YouTube. This has been the only real outlet. I mean, I have my old channel, but I never did anything. I finally went to like Rumble. So I'm testing that out. I mean, just recently I'm testing it out, but I kind of like the free for all at BitChute. And at BitChute, I listen to a lot of music, and all those same music channels I like are on BitChute, and there's no commercials. So I don't know. The comment section, BitChute's crazy though. It's like reminds me of early YouTube, where the comments are just crazy trolls everywhere on BitChute.
Yeah. I remember when YouTube was new and you could only do like 10-minute videos. But the cool thing about YouTube then is you could do response videos. That was cool.
Yes. Oh my God, I forgot about that. It's so sad. There's a sadness in my heart over how wonderful YouTube was through the years, and it served such a greater purpose. And now it's really just.
And then
absurd.
Google bought it.
Yeah.
Do no evil. Right.
Yeah, right. They abandoned that about 5 years ago.
Oh, I bet. They were like, let's get rid of this tag before we push the pandemic.
Something.
Yeah,
and push it they did.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Cool. So, demons.
Oh yeah, that was a podcast I just did, by the way, and apparently Nish, we're all on to demons right now.
My a show I do called Prima Donnas of the Gutter, we just did, and that's up on Rumble, and then we're on Instagram too. I think we have 700,000 people on Instagram. It's over 650, which is bizarre. I don't even manage the account. Amy D does, but I was just like, oh my God, how'd she do this? Anyway, so yeah, we just did a whole hour-and-a-half film style feature on possession, and demons play, of course, they were the main stage of it, in conjunction with some of these movies that came back out. So like the reboot of The Omen that's coming, and The Exorcist, which it was a letdown, by the way. And it led into just this whole extravaganza that we did. And I love this subject, Melissa. I love possession. I love talking about possession. I love talking about what are demons and the different ideas of demons through different cultures that include things like hungry ghosts in Japan, and, like all these different aspects of disincarnate beings or angelic beings turned dark, elves turned into orcs. There's so many correspondence that goes there's so much correspondence that goes along with the idea of demons. What, in your digging around, and of course you've got a deep well of knowledge on all this, what sparked that for you? Was it more than just the season, or?
Well, I wasn't raised religious, and I started to realize that most people weren't, and it's sort of declining in our society. And I'm not suggesting that people be like some austere religion or go back to like the 1500s by any means. And I was looking at the way sort of society is decaying, and I thought, like, are we like possessed by demons? Like, has Satan really tricked us? So I started to look at stuff and what they actually believed, and reading books. And there's a lot of podcasts out with like priests and stuff like that today talking about possession and exorcism in a very serious way. And I just started reading this book from Father Vincent Lampert about it. And I'd
Yes.
seen all the movies, but I was like, okay, no, it can't be as extravagant. It's got to be way more subtle than that. And I'd had a lot of, this is no insult to people who are doing the occult. I did a podcast on occult for years, The Secret Door. And I just had a lot of crazy experiences with certain people that was like, I can't even explain, but that something weird they had something weird on them, or something weird was going on. I don't know. But I thought, what is going on? And I thought, a lot of people don't even know. They just see demons in movies. And I thought, well, I'll do a little 101. And I had this story from the 70s that someone had told me about a demon that attached itself to this Catholic girl. And I thought, well, I'll do a little demon 101 and tell this story, because I feel like, I don't know, it may amount to nothing, but if I don't start, and, no, we're going to lose all that history and I know people think what Christianity is linked to the way things are today. I'm like, well, yeah, of course it is. So I thought, well, I'll just sort of revive or write about it and talk about something that is really basic, like 101, like your basic foundation of what a demon is, how they possess you, what are the hierarchies, what do they believe is under God, and go from there.
So were there things that you found in your digging around with this that surprised you?
Well, that the idea that like you can sell your soul and the devil can give you go to Georgia and give you contracts and
Yes.
right. That's kind of false, because apparently I didn't know you actually can't sell your soul. You don't own it. It's under the dominion of God. I never realized this. So you're never selling your soul to the demon. They're just basically messing with you and breaking you down, hoping to turn you away from God and renounce him. So I didn't know that you couldn't sell your soul. I had no idea.
That's interesting. Is that in Catholicism, or is it also in Lutheran?
Well, I listened to a Catholic priest was talking about that so it's in Catholicism for sure. I don't know about Lutheran.
Well, I'm like you. I wasn't raised in Christian at all whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything I've learned, I've had to learn the hard way, like you're learning, and late. So I feel like I'm constantly playing catch up.
I was raised Catholic, and yes, you cannot sell your soul. Cannot be damaged, taken away from you, disconnected from, etc. It's a permanent fixture of which you have no control.
And I was baptized Anglican. And so I wasn't raised going to church in that structure. I had a chaotic childhood, a chaotic life, but I still am influenced by Christianity because we're still in a Christian nation. And now I'm seeing it fade, and I'm going, oh, obviously I'm not doing my part.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so I've been familiar with Christianity all along, but I was never, I married a Catholic man, and we're no longer married, but I remember the first time I talk about the midnight mass I love on Christmas Eve. Oh my God, I love it so much. But I didn't even know how to cross myself properly. So I remember the first time everyone's getting out to do the whatever, the communion and all this. And I got out and I crossed myself the wrong way. And my mother-in-law's like, no, it's the other way. And then also, it's so funny. I was thinking about this. My house is filled with Madonnas. I love the Mary and I love the Madonna. And I have big, huge antique angels and stuff like from the 1700s. And I'm obsessed with Catholic stuff for sure. But one of the first pictures I ever bought was Madonna and Child floating in the clouds, and I didn't know who she was. So, and I was a teenager, and I was just looking for something lovely in this apartment, to decorate. And it came out of a Catholic mission, and it's actually turns out it's still over where I sleep. It's really rare, and I've only encountered one other ever, and I collect this stuff. But I was like, oh, she's gorgeous. I want her. And they said, oh, that's the Madonna. And this is in the 80s. I'm like, that's Madonna? And
That's like, material
girl, that is how ignorant I was to the Catholic stuff. And I was thinking about that story just this week and reiterating it to a friend of mine, how ignorant I was towards all that. But I've always had this, I don't know what it is, connection to the Madonna. And as I've learned now, Mary is a title, like Cleopatra's a title, like Merlin's a title, Mary of Aradia, or Mary of this. It's the seventh Cleopatra that everyone talks about. Like, I'm deep in this now. Now I can talk about it. But I did not know that. I had no idea about any of this. And so it's fascinating. Another thing that I learned digging into the Bible in the last few years is how absolutely witchy it is.
Yeah. I noticed that about even Mormons and stuff in here. There's a lot of occult involved in it. They kind of like you sort of to not know that. They don't say that, but I'm like, that's interesting. Certain symbols I see. And
imagine how much more occult it was before it was all homogenized.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm obsessed with their baptism of the dead.
So have you ever talked to Micah Dank or listened to any of his stuff?
No. Micah Hank?
Micah Dank.
Micah Dank. Oh, no, I haven't.
Like the dank memes.
I like the way Melissa said that.
I'm like, no, sorry. No,
Y'all had to see her face. It was genius.
So his whole thing is that the Bible is an encoded astrotheology manual.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting.
It is.
I don't know if I buy it, but it's interesting for sure.
Oh, I think it's tied in, Jer. I do think he does a really good job in it.
Absolutely.
It's hard to not see it once you see it.
Yes. I'm not saying it's not that. I'm just saying that's not the only purpose of it. I think it's multifaceted.
Yeah, that's his thing. And that's the thing. It is not just an astronomical guide.
Yes.
It's not. But he puts it out there that that's its purpose. And I definitely have to step and go, But it is a very intriguing layer to the canon.
For real.
Well, I would believe that it would have multi-purpose use. It's like the iPhone of its time, right? Like it's going to have more than one use, and not trying to trivialize it by comparing it to an iPhone, but
Why is this not streaming?
Is it not streaming?
I don't know. I'm getting like a...
So, you know what? Okay, guys, this is really weird, but me and my husband have been having weird talks and about stuff all day, and things have been chopping up nonstop every time someone phones me and starts talking about weird stuff today. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. It's happening all day long. just today. And I also, once I started writing on demons, I don't know if you're still streaming, it doesn't matter.
No, I
But
am.
once I started writing, I wrote a blog. So there's a companion blog to the actual podcast. So I was writing and I was doing all the stuff and composing it and editing it. And that night I started hearing someone walking up the stairs, which I've never
Ooh.
heard before. And I thought, okay, so what, you start doing this stuff and things show up to freak you out? I was just like, get out of here, you.
That, one of the passages I like, the whole section of Luke 11 is very interesting, but the one famous passage, and it depends on the version of the you're reading from, but where he casts out one, but 7 more come back in. So it's Luke 11:26, and talking about demons. And I have always thought, wow, this is scary. So it's like there's a whole parable going on with that whole Luke 11 situation, but it's almost like not doing a proper parasite cleanse. If you're just getting rid of the adults and you don't get rid of the whole situation, then they just embed themselves deeper into your flesh and the whole problem gets worse. And looking at the idea of possession, and this Luke 11:26 is very important with that idea. It just seems like this idea, this theme is such a deep parable in our collective. I mean, we're talking 2,000 years here, and I did not know about that being a Bible passage until, just, not that long ago, 3 years ago or something. And it really made it a little bit scarier too, thinking about the exorcisms, how one gets rid of these things, and the connection between the idea of parasites, and that you've got to be extra vigilant when you're dealing with these things, because there is this kind of thing. It's literally in the Bible. Be careful.
Yeah, and you can think there's just one and then there's many. And I always say like they kind of tag team and switch out. And I mean they're not omnipotent. They're not God, but they are immortal. So they've got lots of time and energy to mess with you.
Yes. And of course they're tricky, and this whole idea of trying to find the name, getting the name so you have power over it, so you have dominion over it or jurisdiction over it.
Do you think you need to do that though? Do you think that might make you more intimate with it and you might not want to know anything about it?
Well, personally, I don't know, but I know that that's in some of the literature about casting them out. So I don't know, but I do know that from, say, other stuff that touches upon this territory, knowing the name, the real name they go by. So there's like the secret name. So you might know this. I mean, from cults and stuff, and in the occult, the good side of it as well as the bad side of it, that one takes on, when you're initiated, you take on a new name, and that's the private name within the order. And so that's the name that would hold power over you, say, rather than your common name. And so if you're thinking about this, and as far as demons, which are break down into all these orders, kings and princes, and they all have legions of their own, and dukes and all this stuff, it would be interesting. The idea that knowing its name so you can directly deal with it seems not necessarily more intimate, but I can see how the demon or the entity would use that to create an intimacy to then try and finagle its will over yours.
Yeah, or like it kind of reminds me of like a Sith Lord. They get their little evil name, and that's forever who they are. And that's where they get their power from. Yeah, that's interesting, because the other thing with the name is if you start speaking their name too much and you put it out there, I think it gives it power. You know, people will repeat it and other people will hear it and everyone will go, ooh, ah, you know, give them attention.
Yeah, and of course that's, you know, that's part of what they want. But what, and you know, we're in different times too. Like I've never seen so much attention in my life go towards all things demonic and dark as I have in our lifetimes. You know, because
You know,
we're all Gen X here. What are
yeah.
you thinking about that? I mean, you know, the Vatican's done whole exorcisms over whole villages and stuff, spraying holy water from helicopters and stuff. And I'm sure you
Yeah.
encountered all this, that there's an epidemic of sorts.
There certainly is. And I was even noticing this when I was talking back in 2017 that the request for exorcisms is up. And I personally think it's because we're really empty. We're like turned into this consumerist religious I'm not against capitalism, but it's more corporatism, you know, like it's like taking over and we feel empty. And I think there is crazy stuff here. And we have so much mental health problems. We're doing more mental health stuff than ever. And we've got more problems than I've ever even heard of. And I do think we've allowed, with our cultural revolutions and sexual revolutions, you know, we've pushed it to a point where we've allowed things to come through and people have this need for something spiritual. But I think the problem is, and this is the one thing that the priest was saying, that I was reading his book and listened to his interview, is everybody focuses on the demon and everybody focuses on the scary part and how scared they are. And they forget you're supposed to focus on the light of God and Jesus. Like that's why the demon can get there in the first place. So everybody's focusing on this nihilistic, crazy world we lived in because it's convincing. It's there. It's even if it's not even real, even if we're in a simulation, it's convincing. Pain hurts. Things suck. And because we don't have that religion, a lot of people are just throwing it away for materialism. They don't really know that they're supposed to look at the light and love of God to help them not have all this stuff and negative stuff around. And we just aren't taught that.
I would argue on purpose. We're not taught that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody out there listening, but
it does. And I think that a big part of that is because of materialism and science, that education is thought of as a scientific endeavor, and religion, you know, plus the whole separation of church and state, they just keep it separate. So there's no discussion of that kind of thing in school at all, unless you go to a private school or a religious school. Like I went to Catholic grade school, so I got to learn all that crap.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a good balance. Like I think if you're in a household that's so extremely religious, in harsh, you can't even be yourself. That's not good either. You know, I mean, really, God, you know, it should be about that God loves you and you're going to be forgiven, and you just have to have some good morals and be good and serve your community. If it's too harsh, then I think it works the same way as if you're too lenient and too progressive or too liberal. Like you could go either which way and it would not work. It's just, it's about balance, really.
Yep. Nature abhors a vacuum.
It sure does. But yeah, it's I was never taught religious stuff, although I got it from movies. I got anything religious from movies. The only reason I know how to do this is because I watched this Nuns on the Run movie where they'd go spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch. And I remembered that from a movie. That's why I know it. So I didn't learn anything from any serious theologian. I learned it from Hollywood, and most of it's not true.
I think the first time I heard that was Austin Powers.
That's
spectacle,
funny.
testicles, wallet, and watch.
They stole it from Nuns on the Run.
Nuns on the Run.
I think it's got Eric Idle in it. It's a British movie.
Yeah, from the 70s. I vaguely remember it, but I yeah. Anyway, I remember that more from Austin Powers.
That's funny. But yeah, I think a lot of us know, like same with watching The Exorcist. And The Exorcist is probably the original one. I didn't watch the new one because I knew I was going to be disappointed, but it's probably pretty close. I mean, it's probably going to give you the most honest, even though if it's not totally 100%, it's going to give you a more honest perception because it was written by a guy who was a devout Catholic and was having a conflict within himself.
But I thought Blatty came out years later and said it was made up.
I don't think that it means that the possession was factual. Like the possession was real, but he was a Catholic, so he had beliefs. You know what I mean? He had beliefs in what possession was, so he would have put that into his book.
Absolutely, I'm. That was a good example of it. However, I was just saying that I thought later in his life he came out and said that it wasn't an actual possession. Like it wasn't based on a true story or anything.
Probably wasn't.
Yeah.
Although there was a young boy that was supposed to have been possessed at the time.
Yes.
Like in the 50s or something. And I think they really ascertained that he had been sexually abused by an aunt that had died. But again, that you could say it's a symptom, but it's also when you're abused, it acts as an entryway for stuff.
We just got a super chat. Thank you, Dave. From Dave Paxton.
Hey, Dave. I love Dave.
With a question that I don't understand, so I'll ask it anyway. What do you think about the widespread cluster B personality disorder problem? And is it possible to fix it? What is cluster B personality?
So cluster B personality disorder exists of narcissism, borderline personality disorder, psychopathy, and histrionics. I think it's the 4 personality disorders. I'm sure they've all been around, but I think because our culture is mostly based on consumerism, I think narcissism, just in general, we have more narcissism, and I think technology drives it too. So it is out of control, but I think it's because people are becoming more narcissistic. They, I mean, a lot of these personality disorders come from abusive family backgrounds. And then those people go on to behave that way to their children and behave that way to their children or behave that way to their spouses. And it just spreads. And people are talking about it now. And it's actually been identified. I don't think it was ever identified so clearly before as it has been in the past 15 or 20 years.
But are the ultra progressives wanting people to accept it and normalize it? That's
some of them are.
Yeah, that's probably a bigger problem.
You often see borderline groups online who will go, borderline is just, I just get upset once in a while. And if borderline was only that, then we wouldn't have a problem. But it's not that. They're actually thinking that because most borderlines are female, they think that borderline personality disorder might actually be the female psychopathy, female psychopaths, although there are some males who exhibit that. But I mean, they can make your life a living hell, almost like they were a demon, really. And it's in abundance. And I think we just have bigger populations, more crowded, more people, and it's been identified and people are talking about it. So we're seeing it more and identifying it more. I have people in my family that are diagnosed with personality disorders, and it is not fun to live with people who are totally unaware that their behavior is crazy and damaging, and they're not going to do anything about it. So tough luck on you. It's and I don't think it's new. I think they've been around. I mean, Hitler had the dark triad. Stalin, dark triad. They've got psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. They got this like triad of horrible personality that makes them into these super evil. George Soros is probably like that.
Probably.
So I don't think it's new. I just think we're discussing it and it's out there. And so maybe when it's out there, it multiplies more. And we're also more permissive. We accept mental illness as more sympathetic today. And sometimes there's some mental health issues and behavior issues that we shouldn't be sympathetic with because they're purposely manipulative and doing it on purpose, and they know they are.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you know who Jerry Marzulli?
Marzulli?
No, Marzinki.
No, I don't know.
So he worked in the field forever. He's got all the credentials, and he was in the baddest of the bad mental facilities. And he's really blown the this out of the water with the fuckery that goes on with the psychological typing of people and its origins. But I'm not going to get fully into that at all. And I'm going to have him on the Cosmic Salon soon. But it's, when we're seeing things like calling pedophiles minorly attracted persons and normalizing it
Yeah.
and making that something we should feel bad for, and therefore carving a place in society for them and all that. This is an agenda. That's an agenda. And that's not real psychology. Psychology is in bed with other agendas to create this level of disruption.
You almost got to wonder if these people, like everybody's not just possessed by some crazy spirit themselves, like how everything, like they're inverting everything. Good is bad, bad is good. You have to accept abusive behavior. You have to accept that these people are victims. It's like, I'm sorry, you're an adult now. Maybe you were victimized when you were young, but just because you were a victim when you were young doesn't make it okay for you to be a pedophile. It doesn't make it okay for you to, be an abusive, psychotic parent. It doesn't make it okay for you to be an alcoholic who drives and kills people. Like we should know this, and morality and religion is supposed to remind us about this, but people seem to just be like, anything goes, whatever.
Yeah. And see, from my experience, from where I come from with demons and all this, I have firsthand been around them. I have seen firsthand possessions. And it's like when I had my Sasquatch experience, I didn't believe in Sasquatch. I didn't think about it. Then I had my experience. Now I know that shit's real. And so I have had a long-term relationship with whatever that is, whatever those entities are. And for a long time, I didn't understand what they were, their signatures in people around me, within others, and walking amongst us. And when I finally came to terms with it, and I think there was some denial about it, also my naivete, having not been brought up in a world where I wasn't brought into that kind of language, not being brought up Christian. And so they're real. And the full integrated possession that I witnessed, and it is beyond crazy. And a whole bunch of people got to experience that. And it took years and it took decades for her to get to that point. But she got there, and her core personality was absolutely gone. I learned from the church that it's called full integration. And I don't know what happens to a soul. I don't know what happens, but she was gone, and you were always dealing with that thing, and that thing could have unbelievable power and strength. And I don't even know where to go with this story. I will be telling it at some point, but I'm still traumatized from it, and it's been a long time.
Well,
she's now dead. It took her,
oh,
took her, and she made the national news. And so
wow.
but I've seen it. I see it subtly. I know the stench of it. I know the
Yeah.
stench of it. And this is the thing, when people start poo-pooing this type of these energetics, these beings, it's like I was with Sasquatch prior. I guess if you don't know the signature, then you don't know. But these
Yeah.
beings are real. They're real.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend, and she had done some podcasting with me before, and we parted ways because I didn't really just like what was going on in her life. I won't say any names and I won't get specific, but I had this one encounter with her. She used to do like exorcisms herself. No training, no nothing. She wouldn't require anyone to have, like, a real priest is going to get you to go do a full medical psychological evaluation, make sure that everything's okay. And she just went in there like, I'm the magical person. And of course, a priest would never do that. A priest knows that Jesus or whoever is really doing all the work, but she was doing a lot of these exorcisms. And when we were podcasting, she would phone me and try to take up like all my time. Well, I know I'm working 2 jobs and mom, and she was just really manic a lot. And I started to just notice like weird things kept happening around my house when I had her in podcasts, is like just weird, strange things kept happening. And one day she was phoning me on the phone and she wanted to talk for hours and hours about whatever manic topic she had and about her exorcisms. And while we were talking, the phone started to cut out. There was this garbled noise, and I thought, well, I'm losing reception with her. And it was garbling and funny. And all of a sudden, this weird voice, like she was gone. This weird voice came over, and it was like growling, like a demon. And I couldn't even believe it. I thought, was there like a tower here or something's going on? And I thought, well, it could be like a tower, but it was saying stuff and telling me to die. Like it wasn't even her voice anymore. And I thought, okay, well, I think Linnea's not here. Just said her name. Sorry. I think she's not here. So, whoops. I'm going to let you go. And I hung up, but strange things kept really happening. And it happened another time. Now, I've never had that happen with anybody else on a phone call, but with her, it happened twice. And she was doing all these exorcisms on people. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, this is really insane. It happened twice that this voice, everything went all garbly and disconnected. And this weird voice came over almost like on another line. And then when I got her back, she was like, what happened? And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can talk to you anymore. This is creepy. But she came to my house. And we had my landlord who lived upstairs had a German Shepherd, beautiful, kind, never aggressive with anyone. And it was baring its teeth and going crazy at her. And she's like, what's wrong with your dog? And I was like, what's wrong with you? Because it's scared of you. And I'm like, and weird things have just been on the phone. And then before we stopped talking, I just ended it all because there was weird. She was in a relationship with some sketchy things and I didn't like it. She phoned me and said, yeah, I think some things are attached to me from doing exorcisms. And I said, well, you shouldn't be doing exorcisms because you're not properly trained and you don't have a team of people helping you and you're just on your own. And I said, maybe you should start, like she fasted all the time. I said, maybe you should eat some food and get some strength. And she just didn't like my response and she hung up and we never talked again. That was it. She ended the friendship because I wasn't sympathetic and I didn't want to talk about her demon. I'm like, no, you know what? You got to go. I was like, because you shouldn't be doing exorcisms because if they're attaching to you, you're doing something wrong. It was freaky. It was the freakiest thing. So after that, I'm like, I think I believe in this stuff. And that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
I think that happens to a lot of people who decide they want to be something like Reiki master. You know, they pick up a lot of crap from people that way. Yeah. So
there's this, you're making such a good point here. And this is what's bothered me about a lot of stuff that goes on in this, I'm going to just say genre loosely, where people think they can just go head to head with this stuff. First of all, we're dealing with very old and well-fed entities, whatever they are. And then they're disincarnate. And so they've got an advantage over us because we can't actually, it's like gas, like you can't see them or smell them sometimes, but you can feel them. And the playing field, I just don't think is fair. So why would you open yourself up to it? There's nothing that would make me want to be an exorcist. Now I'm fascinated by it and I study it and I have, I have the handbook for spiritual warfare through the Catholic Church. Thank you, Rose, out there for that. And that's for this kind of thing. And I look deeply into all this. I feel it and I know it, but I'm aware that that whole 1 out, 7 in principle from Luke 11:26 right. is at play. I'm aware that trickster aspects are at play. And I'm aware that parasites in general have hooks and they hook into you. And how can you trust? And then the sheer hubris of thinking you can just handle this without training is ridiculous. And all the people I've seen that play around in these arts, if you look at their lives, they're in utter chaos. They're usually really sick all the time. There's bad shite happening to them, accidents here and there, health issues, all kinds of trouble. And this is a sign to me that it's dirty work. They're not clean. They
Yeah.
don't know how to do it. And again, Melissa, I think this gets down to folly. And we could blame Hollywood for this folly, like making you think that you could actually do something like that. This is different than saging your room. This is different than cleaning out the energy in your house. You should be doing that anyway. And but when we're talking about disincarnate, intelligent, sentient beings that have the upper hand on you, you know, buyer beware, be aware.
And when you described the chaos and the sickness, I mean, that's you just described my friend 100%. That's how people like her, like she's popular. I suspect she has a bit of a narcissistic personality because people are very gravitated to this persona that she projects out. I'm like, yeah, well, it's a mess behind the scenes. Trust me, I've known her for a while. And that's why I was just like, yeah, you know what? Anytime you want, you can go, because I'm not doing this stuff where people call me and demons show up on the phone. And people said, well, maybe it was the tower in your area going mad. I said, you know what? I'm willing to accept that that's a possibility. The only thing is it was only with her. It was only those 2 times while she was doing those exorcisms. And I've never had it happen with anybody else on any conversation I've ever had on my phone ever again. So who knows?
It's real.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why it's so cool. Everyone's made this really cool. And that's another thing that looks to me like there's a lot. And we could call these by other names too, archons and all this other stuff. But it's like it's like cool. Like the cool kids do this now. And I'm wondering, like, is that part of the bigger thing going on here? Is that part of the I guess, I don't even want to say this, but is that part of this infection that's going on with these things, that there's so many now that it's almost like it's more of them than us. And that's what it feels like to me. And I my language is kind of failing here because,
well,
carry on.
I think there's just been so many avenues allowed to open for them to enter, and like you said, you try to take out 1-7 show up, and you've got all these like all this, people are talking and focusing on their pain and me, and I'm not my gender, and I don't have this and I don't have that. They're not even focusing on what's good in their life or what they're happy with or what they should appreciate or anything these days. They're just complaining about all their problems, and I need a psychologist, I need this. And I understand the need for some of those things in therapy, but everyone seems to be hyper focused on it and very nihilistic. And I think there's just been so many entryways open, not even just with individuals, but within our own structures. I don't know, maybe the elites intended it that way. Maybe people are doing crazy rituals way above, up in the echelons of crazy Illuminati. I have no idea, but there's so many avenues opened. It's so easy to get in. It's just like a free for all. I mean, back in medieval times, like, we're so free with what we are able to do. We always think it's always been this way, but I mean, a long time ago, if you had sex out of marriage, it was a bad thing, because you could actually, there's things you could do. And if you were messing up and not behaving the way society needed you, crops could fail. You could kill everybody. It was important to keep some rigid rules for survival. And now we just seem to think like, whatever, everything's open. You can be whatever you want, and you can just change. You can change your gender. You can, and there's all these mental illness. And let's not even talk about the drugs that they're handing out and the chemicals that they're putting on us, and the crazy stuff that's messing people's minds up. And there's just so many avenues for this to come in. It's almost insane, and our whole system is doing it.
Well, that's why this is looking like a version of hell, like like Dante's Inferno or something, where the scape is very hellish out there. And it's definitely top down, but look at how fentanyl, look at people all high in fentanyl. These people look demon zombie-like. They're
Mhm.
bending and contorting in ways you can't imagine. And now there's whatever is in there that's eating their flesh up. And I have just seen, and I put some of these photos in that Prima Donnas of the Gutter episode, just absolutely, completely ghoulishness where there's, bones showing and all that. And they're walking around, they're still doing it. Now, we know this was all set up, that a lot of people didn't even get on fentanyl, but for the hard way. They were buying, marijuana and it was laced with fentanyl, or they're buying whatever, crack, and it had fentanyl in it. There's
Yeah.
been a whole agenda here that one could say has a genesis out of whatever these dark entities are, whatever these things are that have taken control and are running amok in our experience in the outer world. And alchemically, the vessel has cracked. This is not the vessel's not sealed. And so it's a very bad landscape right now. My bird's agreeing. So there's all that at play too. And I do
Yeah.
think that what you were saying earlier is so poignant, because when we allow ourselves to open up our sacred holy system, our holy temple, our body, right, in ways that bring in these things, and it could be a myriad of ways. It could just be having all this casual sex with strangers, or it could be just drinking yourself to death, or whatever it is. You're opening your system up for these things to enter in, and they just enter in slowly and subtly. And this is the thing that the Catholic Church has always brought into focus with it, is how subtle it is. And why, of course, their routine for what is a demon possession and what's not. Have we checked out? Are they mentally stable? Were they mentally stable, etc.? Were there drugs involved? All this other stuff. And I'm just using the Catholic stuff as a template. But if you're looking at someone that was a really great person, and then somewhere along the line something happened, and then they started making really bad choices, and then deeper into depression and more bad choices, this is very parasitical. This is something that's going on internally, and that is the signature of a demonic possession in the beginning.
Yeah. And you're right. It's so subtle. Like, there's stages. And I outlined pretty much really simple, like things like that. Like, you start with infestations, like little knocks, and it almost is like, oh, you've got little paranormal activity happening, or just it's like a nothing. Or like one of the story that I tell in my podcast, it actually shows up as a dream and avoid some kind of figure giving her good advice at first, and then it sort of does that little, bait and switch, and starts telling her mean things then in her mind, and saying bad things once it's got her kind of lured in. It's so subtle, and if you're not aware, you can miss it. You can just think and ignore it, and next thing you know, you're depressed, and like it goes infestation, then it goes oppression, then you're feeling down, and you just think, well, depression happens, and our society will just tell you, well, you're depressed, so here's some medication. No, they won't look at it in a spiritual way at all. They won't look at it as a spiritual crisis.
And in Canada, they'll let you kill yourself over it.
Yeah, they're like, here's a pod. Step on in.
Step in.
The maid
Exactly.
system.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, see, one of the things that when your work with cults and cult leaders and stuff and all that, does this not tie in? This looks like some of those profiles you were doing.
Yeah, they're the dark triad. Those cult leaders, they're infested with something. I mean, you just look at Jim Jones, and from the time he was a young boy, there was something astray, but he had trauma. They have trauma, and I think they let things in something almost takes them over, and they become, even when he was young, like this little weird hypnotic preacher. Hitler is the same way. Abuse, psycho, but they can oratate and manipulate people because they're in despair. They always target on people who are in despair. Germany was, despaired because they lost the First World War, and their economy was horrible, and their Kaiser got away with it. So they want it to be, they want it to be a good country again. And you get a psychopath who takes advantage of that. Jim Jones, he took advantage. The majority of people he took advantage of were Black people. And he's saying he wasn't racist. So they focus in on a weakness, just like a demon does.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And they slowly lure you.
Yes. Jerry looks 100%. Like he's going to talk. So, and then, well, just to round it back to what Jerry was saying, so the MAID system. So what I've been seeing is this has taken over all of our governing and these entities are in all of our governments. And some of the worst examples are with the Canadian MAID system.
They are our governments.
They are our governments, and that system alone, and looking at the propaganda around it and the simplicity and ease of how they put it up forward, looks very, very demonic to me. It is unbelievable how that is playing out. And I think they have that in France. I know they have that in Oregon over here, not to the same degree. Canada's like taking it to a different level, but that's coming everywhere, I think.
It is so slick and so tricky. And you can tell that people are buying it, don't understand that to kill yourself is like really a bad thing to do. Like it's God really doesn't want you to kill yourself. And the fact that the government is so incompetent that they're offering this to people instead of real care is pretty disgusting.
It's cheaper.
Exactly. It's cheaper.
Well, it's serving a dark purpose, though. This is violent delight.
Is it like? Do you think it's like I think it's sacrifice, personally.
100%. I think it's a sacrifice. I think it's absolutely violent delights. And I think these things are feeding off of that 100%. And I'm so curious as to how the recycling system is going, when we talk spiritually about recycling and all this. And this goes into whatever people want to think about the ET experience, because that it goes separate, but what we have heard, and not only what we've heard from the ET experience. So if we go back to the writings of Lovecraft and all this, I think the Whisper in Darkness or whatever, I can't remember that one.
Whisper in the Darkness.
Yeah, thank you. And my friends Matt and Andrew made a film out of that. Anyway, so
and I've seen it.
Yeah, they have the Historical Society in LA. Anyway, so the idea of recycling and the idea of manipulating soul energy, whatever that is.
That whole ET moon.
Yes.
The frequency net that captures souls when they reincarnate. Yeah.
Yes. And like this whole idea of the false light and all this, I think all of this is kind of playing into this on some level. There are threads that if you start pulling them, you can see that there are dots connecting all this stuff together. And this has a very demonic signature to me. And that MAID system in Canada is just like a feeding trough.
Yeah. And what's really compelling, and I talked about this, like why do the demons want, like why do they want to do this? It's because they're at war with God. They've been expelled. They're angry, and they want to turn as many people away from God as they can. So if you're doing a suicide, they're like, haha, they want as many people to turn away from the light. That would make them happy. That's what they want.
Does it technically count as a suicide if you're not the one pulling the trigger?
Yeah, well, you are making the decision. finally.
You get coaxed
Absolutely.
into it, and your
You get
choice,
coaxed
you
into it.
contract. Yep.
Okay.
You contract, you do make the decision. Now, if they're hurting you into something and gassing you and killing you against your
Yeah,
will, obviously not.
Obviously not.
But you are ultimately, you still have the decision right now. I mean, you don't have to. I don't know if that will change. It's a scary, slippery slope. I was never for this in Canada. I don't know how. I mean, Trudeau is a psychopath.
Yes.
There's
Oh,
something
and he's
wrong
a
with
demon.
him.
He's a demon.
Yeah, he's a demon. He's like, look at my sexy socks. Look how awesome I am.
Watch me get my fake vaccine today.
Yeah, that's right.
And, you know, there's a common thread behind all these so-called possessed leaders. It's the WEF.
Klaus Schwab.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're talking about a head demon, that dude is a good candidate right there, Klaus Schwab.
He's like an archetype. I mean, he's a classic. Classic.
It's like Dr.
You know-
Evil incarnate.
You know that suit that he was in? Apparently,
Yes.
that was he was doing a speech at some kind of university or something
Yes.
like that,
Yeah.
and that's their suit. And
Yes.
and they're like, well, he just wore it because it was their suit. I'm like, well, they have a pretty sick, twisted suit then, and he's he's obviously really oblivious to the fact that he looked like a psychotic supervillain, and he has a German accent. Americans are like, what?
And,
You'll
and
eat
just
Bugs.
And his father was a Nazi.
And his father
Yeah.
was a Nazi.
yeah, he's first class. He's like, if we're giving these titles, he's definitely like he's above Duke for sure. I mean, he's a high ranking, whatever's in him is a high ranking demon. And we're looking at a picture of him. And it's unbelievable. He reminds me of the guy in what's his name in Star Wars, the evil dude. Not
Darth
Darth
Vader?
Vader, the Emperor right there.
the Emperor.
Palpatine.
Just give him a hood.
Yeah. It is so creepy, and I mean, they're infiltrated everywhere. WEF is infiltrated everywhere. I wonder, I've never really focused on what's above him. There's got to be something above him. I don't know if he's doing some crazy ritual or something's influencing him, but it's just too crazy.
I really do think that there is a layer of control above the physical realm here.
Mhm.
So whatever is controlling these people, I don't think it's other humans.
No.
Like not the White Dragon Society in China.
It's-
I don't buy that.
Yeah.
It's something else. Maybe Modwiz could tell us all about the Dragon Societies. I think he was into that back then. Hi, Modwiz. He's in chat.
Hey, Modwiz. Radagast.
Hello, everyone else in chat.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm not there, obviously, but
We love you. Thank you for coming.
yes, hello.
Yeah,
and I'm sure, is Oswald out there?
He is. And he has
Because-
questions already that I've got written
Well,
down.
that's what I'm saying. Oswald always has questions, so I'm sure you have them, Jerry.
I do. He wanted to know about what Melissa knew about any cults in Victoria. Fuck was
Okay,
that?
well,
What was it?
just give me a second here. I know that Victoria is a hot spot of Vancouver Island for the occult and for Satanism and for anything like that. As far as cults, I didn't study any specific cults. I know there used to be a cult on the island that was in Nanaimo. It was a Brother 12, but this was way in the 30s and 40s. But there are little satanic cults. There's witchcraft groups. There's just pagans and, people who just are interested in it. But if you want to, I was in a bookstore there, and that's where I found, hard to get Aleister Crowley books. I mean, it's big there. And the island certainly is a strange spot of cults, but I've heard, they're hard to point to. I've heard of satanic cults. I've seen them post things on bulletin boards and laundry rooms, or laundromats, and strange stuff. But there is this group. There's an island where Brother 12 operated his cult back in the 30s before he got busted and took off. And strangely enough, there's still remnants there. And this newspaper company, Black something, not Black Rock, Black something, I can't remember the name. They went out of their way to purchase it all. So I found it interesting that they want it so badly to purchase this property where there's still buildings and stuff of this famous cult leader on the island. I thought, what are they up to? What's the owner of that company up to? It was really creepy. So there are still people there who operate that, but I've never heard of and focused on any major cult on Vancouver Island. I know if you go to Switzerland, you're going to find like 10,000 operating cults. Like, it's massive cult city, probably because they have Swiss Bank and stuff like that, but it's huge with cults, Switzerland. That's where the Billy Meyer cult is. But I don't think, I mean, it's so easy to run a cult. You could run a cult on anything. And I think, honestly, today, most of your cults are going to be online anyways.
There's a lot of influencers out there, Melissa, that I'm not going to name names, but I see big cults around in just the like truther community and stuff like that. And it's amazing. And how fast they go from 0 to 60.
Yeah. And again, cults are happening because people are looking for something to fulfill an empty spiritual void that they have because they're in the land of materialism all the time. That's my belief anyways. I think they're lacking something and they're looking for something that society hasn't given them or hasn't shown them that, hey, and a lot of times they go in for dark things, or like you'll get a cult leader who says he is Jesus, or he'll claim he's some super special person. I mean, people, if somebody's claiming that, run. There, that's like the biggest red flag. If they're specially magic and more important than you, no. Get out. Like, it's so creepy. That's creepy. That's not being humble before God.
Well, and it doesn't even matter if you're religious or not. That's just like the main red flag. When a person is the special one and they got all the answers and you need to go through them to get the answers. That is classic. It's a big red flag. And also a lot of them run on doom.
End of days. Death cult.
End of days is big money, and it has been forever, since the beginning of days.
It's day one. Let's talk about the end. They're like, hell, why not?
I mean, there's one thing about being aware of all the fuckery going on. There's another thing, and talking about it and unraveling all of this. That's one thing. That's not doomy to me. Yeah. But these people that are constantly telling you that, I mean, I don't even know how to parse it out, because some people are so subtle. They're very subtle with it. And, a lot of times, like I said, the biggest thing, like you said, the biggest thing is if they have the answers and you don't, if they're special and you're not, or if there's some initiatic process to get to be special, that should be a red flag as well. And we see this in a lot of fraternal orders. And in general, like is always being said, it's not your goth kids over here. It's not the Addams Family people. It's the Cosbys, it's the Cleavers. It's the normal or put together people. It's just so funny how the image of darkness that people consider the scary stuff, it's like a reverse. Think about the serial killer Ted Bundy. I mean, he was like a normal guy with charisma, and he didn't have anything creepy about him except for he would kill you. But there's something to that. And for some reason, it still just is hilarious to me that people will point to people that like to dress witchy, or people that, even like Wiccans. Come on. Wiccans love the earth. I mean, it's stupid. It's so stupid.
I mean, anything can turn into a cult, and what you have to remember is cult leaders, the psychopaths, they're everywhere. Like, it just say it's the Catholic Church, or it's just here. No. They look for whatever thing that they can prey on. So they'll go into any group that has their targeted victim, and they're never going to start off saying they're Jesus. They're going to start off saying, "Hey," they look at people and they're like, they have this sense of who's a good victim and who is naive and who's in a bad situation in their life, and then they know the people who are going to call their bullshit. They know how to do that, and they sort those people out, and they're going to start, and they're going to see, maybe you have some low self-esteem, maybe you're just out of university, maybe you've gone through a divorce, who knows what it is, but they'll come up and they'll just start saying nice things to you, and they'll start trying to feed your confidence like no one ever has before. And that's how they'll start. They might even send somebody else out to do it, like a girl, and it'll be an awkward boy, and she'll be like, "Hey," and pretend she's interested in him. Like, it's so subtle and you won't even see it, because they'll say, "Hey," like, "Hey, your music's really good. You're a really good writer. I can't believe no one's ever told you that before, but I'm telling you it," and that's how they'll start. It won't start with all the holy rolling stuff. That's what's interesting. People think they're going to see some evil thing, and it's usually just some real innocent comment where, just like I talked, demons can do the same thing. They'll just be like, "You know what? Like, you're actually really smart." They just try to feed your ego, and they're good. They know people who need it and who are lacking and who are desperate for something.
Yeah, and this is the psychology behind it. But then when they start separating people from their own communities, and they start isolating, and that whole process, and then so you can take someone who's really open-minded, which is probably how they ended up in that position, and who's a seeker and just searching, and they don't even have to have depression or anything else going on, and they get in the hands of somebody charismatic, and that charismatic person just slowly does what you're saying, like almost like love bombing, and creating value and confidence building in a creepy, cringy way. There's a difference between being authentic and being a predator, and there's subtleties here, and they take advantage of the subtleties. And so often, a lot of this is religious based, and that's why I'm saying Wiccans, I'm sorry, they're just not culty and evil. And generally, witches that I are not. It's not usually those types. It's these other types. It can be your psychologist. It can be your psychoanalyst. It definitely can be your pastor. And we've got the process church, and we've got all these other things to look at. And it's just funny how an image like somebody who likes to wear all black will be the scapegoat, because I'm one of those people. I'm a witchy poo, and it's just always so funny to me to think about the judgment people throw on me just by the way I dress and the stuff I like.
Well, and the thing is the whole cult thing relies on group, that they know that people like to be in a group, they like to be accepted, and once you get them in there, they won't call you out. People, like, I'm the same way. I wear a lot of black.
You are totally highly unlikely. Witchy poo right now. You've got the witchiest beautiful wallpaper behind you. You look like Morticia right now. Come on, girl.
Thanks. But I'm saying, we're more independent. Like, I'm more or less likely to get into a group and be really skeptical of it. To see me as a possible cult leader is hilarious, because that sounds like way too much work to me, to manage a whole bunch of people and try to control them. That sounds exhausting. I'm like, fuck off. Sorry. I'm like, go get your own, go get someone else to be. I couldn't do it. I'd be like, really, I'm kind of tired today. Could you just go away? I'm sort of watching TV.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I want to go to the gym. I don't want to instruct you on cult. I don't want to brainwash you today. Sorry. It just doesn't sound, it sounds like too much work to me, but I'm not a dark triad megalomaniac psycho. And most people don't understand that. They don't even know what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's predator energy. And and if you don't know the signature of somebody that's being real and authentic around you, then it's easy to get pulled in by those types. If you've grown up in a family that was full of, just say, since we're using psychological terms, just say full of narcissists, you don't really know what love is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know
Yeah.
what that kind of
I
love
have I had
is.
I have a family of total narcissists, so I'm there. I should be in a cult by now. But I think I don't, for whatever reason, I was like, oh yeah, I know what you're up to.
Yeah, and that's because you learned, and
Mhm.
probably the hard way. And
Oh
so
yes.
that's the thing. Some of us do learn the hard way. I did too. Love was always used. Love is always used. It's a classic one to use. And
Yeah.
that's why it's really important to understand what real love bombing is, as opposed to empathetic, real, because some people are very lovey and they are just naturally that way, and they're not trying to
Mhm.
game you. And
Yeah.
it's something to understand these nuances. That's why it's important. But these highly efficient predators understand how to use that against people. And as much experience as I've had in this, I've been got before, and not even
Yeah.
that long ago.
Yep.
So it can happen to any of us at any time. It's tricky, and it's very sad when it happens, and then you tear yourself up more. Like, how did I allow this to happen?
Yeah. Because, well, you know, you get vulnerable and you like to feel good and you want to feel welcome somewhere, and maybe you've been an oddball all your life and you're like, wow, I finally fit in, and it's all a ruse, unfortunately. Or it's not because the person likes you and wants to get to know you and likes you as a person and authentically wants to talk to you. It's they want something from you, and they're going to use you until they get it, and then they're going to abuse you and discard you.
Yeah, just like any old common pimp.
Uh-huh.
But that's true of almost everything in life.
And
Of,
that
of
makes my case for this being a hellscape.
Oh, yeah. It's a realm of death. It goes along with the death cult. It only makes sense that there are death cults in a realm of death, because the only thing that happens here is that people and things die.
Yep, that's the pillar of fate.
Yeah.
You can, except for there's the transhumanism agenda, which is trying to cheat it. And these beings have been body jumping for as long as there have been bodies. So this is why we see this in certain bloodlines. This is what we see in certain rituals, like the baptism of the dead, or in certain things like the Solabuska tarot deck, which is a great example of this. And in Invaders, is that it? Intruders, the book and the series. This narrative's out there. Skeleton Keys, another good example of it. The body jumping entities. And we can loosely call them a lot of different things, but these things are staying in this realm, and they want to stay in this realm that we have definitely identified as, you're not free here. You come in here, and this is not a realm of freedom. So whatever you think it is, it's not that. You come in and you got to pay to play every which way you go. And if you have a good middle class or upper class childhood, then you get a nice childhood and you get into the world and they help you out. But then at some point you got to pay to play. Lower class people and a lot of middle class people, under the mid to lower middle class people, understand that it's a hustle, baby. And if you don't get on that wheel, you're going to fall off. And where you're going to fall? You're going to fall to the street. And then what's going to happen, etc. And big brother is going to be taxing you every which way, from your paycheck to the food you buy, to the movie you go to the now the flatulence you put out, and all of it. Every which way, we are slaves here, and people somehow have convinced themselves that we're not in a slave hellish realm. And I get the idea that you attract, the law of attraction and all that, but the things that we're attracting that are beautiful are from somewhere else, and we're projecting them out. That's why some of us do have beauty in our lives. That's why some of us have leisure and have beautiful yards and beautiful things, because these are reflections of what's inside of us. And
absolutely.
And that, you can see how that piggybacks out. And so why we're seeing so much of this hellishness is there is a lot of this now at play, where we're seeing all the poisons hatch out from people, all the dark fears. The terrors have been released, the terror demons have been released, and they work in conjunction with the principalities and the powers.
That's right.
And there's
100%.
the whole thing about the lower fourth dimension merging with the third dimension.
Really?
Yeah.
It's elaborate on that, Jerry, for people that don't know.
I don't know much about it. I hear a lot about it. People have been talking about it for at least 10 years. What we call the astral plane is actually, according to some people that I follow, what we consider the astral plane, the dream time, whatever, is actually a construct that was built to control people, because in the real quote-unquote astral plane, it's long and involved. Basically, in the real astral plane, and the way apparently humans used to be, that they would energetically create in this astral dream time realm what they want to manifest in the physical realm. And when they awoke, and if they put enough energy or whatever into it, it would happen. So the powers that be, the controllers, whomever, whatever, the Anunnaki, broke us so we couldn't do that by putting up this fake astral realm where we have limited energetic capabilities. And that's where all these parasites live, in this lower astral, lower fourth dimension, whatever you want to call it.
Is it like a trap?
No.
Like when we die, can we get sucked in there?
I don't think so. It's more like a playpen.
Oh.
That's kind of the impression I got from it. It's more of a playpen instead of being the expansive realm that it could be, or that it actually is. And I don't know if this is true. I have no idea. It's just things that I've heard from a lot of different people. Anyway, this sandbox, if you will, of the astral realm that we're exposed to is merging into our realm, and that sandbox was apparently loaded with energetic parasites of all types, which is essentially the same thing as a demon to me. Some have more power than others, but for the most part, they're just energetic parasites. So that could be an explanation for it too, if that was true. Why it's more prevalent.
So because these realms are merging, we're seeing it more and going, what the hell happened to my America, or what's going on here
to my world?
And we're calling it out. Yeah. It makes sense. Like me and my husband, we'll have this conversation and I'll be like, things were not like this in the 80s. I'm sorry. I know we still had technology and it wasn't like this, but there's something really, really wrong here. And I'm like, my son doesn't even see it because he's so used to it. And I just feel sad that, like, my son's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh my God, son, it's crazy here.
Yeah.
Like you have no idea what's happening. It's insane. He just looks at me like I'm the crazy one.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, well, that's what happens when all you do is sit behind your computer and you never got out and saw reality.
Yeah, exactly. And for us older people, I mean, I'm 10 years older than you, probably more. Yeah. The world we grew up in, Nish too, she's around my age. The world we grew up in is gone. Like completely gone. It's completely different. And
that's why I've done everything Gothic retro 70s in my office.
I love it, and I love it. And I'm sure a lot of this goes back to that old cliche of the older people looking at the young kids going, get off my lawn. Like you newfangled rock and roll kids, and that kind of generational thing. But I don't think it was ever so stark.
No, I don't think so. And I don't think it was ever so nihilistic. And one of the things that I noticed, one of the things that there was always still hope, and you had this dream and family, there was all that stuff still being promoted. One of the things that I've noticed is that as, say, the people who were in the war generation and they were babies, they're dying. They're all going away. And I think that's why things feel even more weird, because I can feel their energy leaving. It's gone. That information is gone with them. I had that when my grandmother died in 2019. I remember sitting in bed going, she's gone. I can't ask her. I'll forget because it's not my memory. I can't ask her anymore. Like, it's gone. I felt like this sadness because this information was gone. And so more and more this is happening. And what's left in this planet that's reproducing information is younger and younger people. And yeah, like what they're bringing forth in their mind and what they're projecting out is kind of fucked up, if you ask me.
Yes. And on top of all that, we've got the digitization of our history happening. You know, all of our information is being digitized, and it's susceptible to being changed on the fly, which we know is happening. We just don't know to what degree. And it's limited in its capability. Like, we don't have good records going back past 100 years online. It's all in books. And it's unlikely that stuff will ever make it online completely. You know, like every book. So we're going to lose a lot of our history and texts and whatnot. At some point in the future, it's not going to be available because the books will no longer be available or not be sold, or, you know what I'm saying? It's all going to be online, and they're just not going to have ever caught up to reality. And I don't know. It's just, it's a bad situation in like 50, 60 years, 100 years maybe. I mean, what will they look back on as traditional at that point? What's the basis for everything other than technology? I
think that's why there's companies now trying to be more traditional. And I guess that's probably why I started Ghostly Archives, is to take stuff I have that's not online and try to put it there. But I mean, they could change it. They could cancel me out. They could edit. I mean, they can do anything.
Right. I know.
Switch it. They can make it not ever existed. They can make me not have ever existed.
They could disappear.
The editing is almost lifetime now. It's good. The AI programs, not the sentient anything, the AI programs for editing fast with the metadata is really fast now. It's slick, and they are absolutely changing stuff. And so not only are we, at least in America, under a book ban of all kinds of different books now that are considered contraband, basically. And there's a whole list, and list
for anyone or just in schools?
No, all over. There's a whole go to the NIH. Dave Paxton knows a little thing about this.
I'm curious
out there.
That.
Yeah, there's whole books you can't. Well, let me start with telling you that you can't have what is the classic one where
Anarchist
they used to make?
Cookbook.
What about To Kill a Mockingbird?
There's a whole
the Anarchist Cookbook is what you're thinking of.
That's the flagship one. But there's a whole bunch now that you're not supposed to have. You're not supposed to sell them. And so there's that. I've been tracking this. So I have I have a whole file of screenshots on this. There's new books all the time that are happening that are considered contraband. And so I don't know how they're enforcing it, but I know that they're saying these books are dangerous, and because they're dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the digital world, they're going in and they're changing books. So I keep screenshots of all this too. They're changing actual verbiage in the books. And so the hard copy book will be completely different in some cases than the digital version. And this goes into even fiction and sci-fi and stuff because of whatever reasons. I don't know. This is a sickness. This is an agenda. And it's going deeper. It's like when I was trying to tell people 10 years ago that the site My Life was set up by the Chinese as a social credit system, everyone I know, no exceptions, told me I was bala crazy and that shit would never happen here. I'm trying to use the better English word so I don't get in trouble. That that would never happen here, that it's impossible, and I'm out of my mind. And what are we looking at? We are on the door. It's already happened. The firewall on the internet is ridiculous. You can't do a proper search anymore, and all you get is I don't care what server you're using here, all you get is the approved algorithmic responses. Usually searches are now just presenting a few pages, where back in the old
That's it.
days we had hundreds of you could
Yep.
just go on endlessly through all the junk, all the good stuff. It was glorious. It was fabulous. We are under such an extreme firewall right now, and people just think it's normal. And people just think, oh, it's the algorithm pushing up 5 pages. No, look for shit you used to look for and see if you can find it. If you've been a
Yeah.
seeker, a rabbit holer, you can't find this stuff anymore. I can't find my own personal stuff that I know I put out there, let alone other people's stuff. This is real and it's happening, and there's no way, a reason, a rhyme why we should sugarcoat it and act like it's 20, 30 years down the road. We're living in it right now.
Yeah. It is very disturbing, and yeah, it's nihilistic. But I mean, my only hope is that, really, you know how they say, you know, tough times, you know, weak men make tough times, and tough times make strong men. I can only hope that that cycle means that this isn't forever. I can only hope that. I don't know what else. Sometimes I think it's just all out of my hands.
I have to share this with you. So,
because we're creating tough times for ourselves unknowingly. It's not.
Absolutely.
It's going to be hell.
That's the whole.
I don't even think we've seen the worst yet.
That's the whole fourth turning idea.
We have not. Melissa, you're correct. This is we're spiraling down.
I got to share this with you. So that cycle you just described, that whole, I'm pretty sure it's like the fourth turning idea.
Yeah.
There was this kid who moved to New York City from Iowa a couple years ago and was just enamored with the bodegas and how people lived in the city, coming from a smaller town. And he was making TikTok videos, and there were people critiquing his videos. It was funny. I won't get into it. But anyway, they called him Bodega Chad. Someone made this meme, which I'll put a link in it. But I thought it was really funny. That's the guy. And then this was one of the guys who was critiquing him.
God, he looks like the crazy girlfriend meme.
I know, totally.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny. And where's my
Oh my goodness.
window? Here's that meme. There we go. I don't know what all that crap is on there, but there you go. Oh, it's too long. God damn it, Tony. Anyway, talk amongst yourselves.
So,
well, go ahead.
Yes, Melissa.
No, go ahead.
So I do think that, and I'm not, I'm not out trying to be a doomer. I'm just trying to be a realist. And as I've been following and tracing all this stuff all along, it's continued to get worse, not better, not for our betterment. None of the technology seems to be coming out for our betterment. It seems to be more in line for a deeper sense of enslavement and tracking. And how do we, there's no way to sugarcoat that. We shouldn't sugarcoat that. We should look at that straight on. And we should call it as we see it, instead of thinking, well, it'll we shouldn't normalize it. And this is the thing with being, I'm a solid Gen Xer. And so, I do remember the 80s really well. And part of the 70s. And it was a whole different world. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on, and there are waves of bad stuff as well. But the actual signature, the energetic signature of this realm, isn't anywhere near that. It's not even comparable. I don't even know how you can compare the energetic signatures from those decades to where we are now post the turn of the century. And it's getting normalized, and children are being this new wave. And I said this from the beginning, and I know other people have too, is that we're bringing in a new race of people. They've been augmented in one way or another. They're coming into a world that has no connection to really the old world, which was more analog. There's no connection to that. And I can't think, somebody was talking about, it might have been Lalita on her latest show. They're talking about the rave kids and how these kids are playing. She would teach, she's done a lot of stuff, but she had like at horse camp or something, real horses, right? Real horses, how you deal with real horses. And these kids would come in and they would know all about horses because of their apps. They were playing with them and online and all this. And then they wouldn't know they would think they knew what they were doing. You clean their hooves, and I can't even remember all the stuff. I grew up with horses. But anyway, they didn't even know what to do with the real horses. Like this is the disconnect. So digitally, it's one thing, analog, it's another. And a lot of these kids aren't even interested in the natural world at all. And this is the new generation coming in. They are different now. I don't even need to
into the matrix.
Born into it, a deeper layer of slavery than, say, conceptually we were.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even have TV really. I mean, maybe 3 channels, but I never watched it. I didn't have TV when I was young. You just played outside all day long.
Yeah, we get kicked out.
Yep, same for
outside.
Me.
Yeah,
we weren't allowed to watch TV.
I had to fight my parents for it. Come on.
And there were TV shows that I was not allowed to watch. Like I was not allowed to watch The Three Stooges as a kid.
Yeah,
because my parents felt it was too violent.
Wow.
Imagine now, though. But the Stooges were, they were always, there's all kind of antics. But imagine that now. I mean, because that's like nothing.
I know.
Well, and the one thing I think that's really weird now, and this ties back into the demonic, is the over-sexualization, not healthy sexualization, the over-sexualization of our culture to some weird extent now, where they're confusing everything.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like it's so over. Like I've never seen anything. And some Gen Z is apparently not that sexual. Like they're like kind of like not even doing it, but they're over sexualized on the internet in a weird, perverse, unnatural way.
Well, transvestites are everywhere. And I don't think people should confuse transvestites with transgenders. Transgenders are trying to pass, and a lot of them, you wouldn't even know you're next to one. And they're definitely not part of like this agenda. The transvestites, I think we need to start understanding these differences are a whole different thing. And there's a huge amount of pedophiles within transvestites. These are the ones that look like your football player that puts on a terrible wig and doesn't know how to tuck. and they just need to remain in sex clubs and not sexualizing our children and all that. This is a big deal. And that I didn't grow up around that. I didn't see that. Yeah. And I've grown up around a lot of gay culture. Because I was a childhood model. Gays were everywhere. I love gays and trans people, real trans people were everywhere. But guess what? They were rare. And again,
they were fringe.
They were fringe and rare.
Are.
Right. The real ones are, but
Yes.
everything's like now it's like these weird pedophile transvestites everywhere, these weird, like weaponized people frothing at the mouth about everything. Meanwhile, they're genociding us because they're sterilizing our kids through all this.
Yeah. And if they're not, I mean, the kids are literally becoming addicted to porn and therefore they can't even function normal. So it's like nothing
But the
will,
porn, look at the porn.
nothing would, it's creepy.
But look at the porn. The porn these days is crazy. So it's furry porn. It's all this weird, like extreme crazy kinds of porn. It's again the transvestitism, furry porn, all these weird fetishes that are just so unbelievable that were beyond the fringe when during my growing up. And I'm a Gen Xer. We love gender bending. We love pushing boundaries. We loved all that stuff. And yet what I see now is apps, and we had an artful take on it as well. It was like Rebel. It was an artful thing.
Yeah, but you didn't want to go teach a 4-year-old it. You didn't want to expose it to someone who couldn't understand. That's weird.
The sexualizing of kids is wrong wherever and anywhere you're talking about. It's absolutely abhorrent. And the fact that the books that they're feeding these children and that the parents don't have any control over it. I'm sorry, it's not a beautiful world. This is a hellscape.
Yeah. And the demons are running the madhouse, unfortunately.
Yeah,
they are, and that's what it looks like.
And I think the overall agenda behind all this is transhumanism. I think once everyone's confused on genders, and then we get robot bodies, and the demons can live in robot androids and have bodies here in this realm. I think that's the whole. That's where everything's.
That's the trans agenda. That's the bigger.
Yes.
That's the bigger trans agenda.
I agree. Yep. I agree.
Oh, Jesus, take the wheel. I'm just gonna go back to God. I'm like, I'm out. See you later. Where's one of those pods again? No,
oh, geez.
I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that.
So
that's why it's so important to say no. You're not, like, say the truth.
Yeah.
The power of no. The power of no is a big deal.
Which leads very well into this question from Dave Paxton. Thank you for the super chat, Dave. Unnecessary, but appreciated.
Did Dave give another super chat? I think that's 2 now.
Maybe it was him. I don't remember. We got 3 tonight, and thank you very much for those.
Well, make sure some shekels get to me, Jer.
Dr. Strangelove, yes, it's a second from Dave. You can have it all.
Thank you, Dave. It's been like a year and a half, 2 years.
I haven't gotten a payment.
Dave, thank you very much. The super chats are very welcome, but I think buy me a coffee is a better option because they don't take all the money.
Yeah, and I don't get any of it. All right. So his question was, given what you know and see, how do you turn it off and see the peace? Is that possible once you see the veil?
Well, I know me and my husband, like, we were doing a lot on X or Twitter, and we had to tone it down and get away and start thinking about positive stuff and the things that we want to see in this world, as opposed to what is in this world. I just feel like, a lot of the older generations are going and they're not going to be here for long. And we're Gen X, we're going to be here for a while. And it's our job to really, because the reason they want to control everything and they want to monitor everything is they want to control our thoughts, because they know that our thoughts equal things. It equals movements, equals stuff in this world. They know this. They understand the secret, or they understand a lot of these things. That's why they use such heavy propaganda and they manipulate and they confuse everybody. And I just think we have to get away from it. And I don't know if you're going to meditate. I don't know if you're going to get back into something with the Bible or look at the God or light, but we have to have periods of time where we're not on the internet and we're away from it, and we can be positive and do things that we like and not get wrapped up the same way that Gen Z is, because we're still here for a while and we can we can make a difference still, and we can influence Gen Z as well. If we're not wrapped up in technology and we're focusing on positive stuff that we want, it's not that we don't know that there's bad stuff out there. It's just, it's going to bring our vibration down and pull us into that whatever shithole that it wants. And we've got to somehow stay up and away from it and get off the internet and have these moments where we're just outside. I don't care if you're mowing the lawn or you're folding the laundry, but you're not wrapped up in it.
And that's beautifully said. And this is literally a solid way to move forward. We've got to continue to have relationships with nature and with the idea of love and compassion for people, the people around us that we love. Nature alone, just getting out and sitting in the garden, is so powerful. It's unbelievably powerful, with no devices, just sitting in solitude. You don't even have to garden. It's just a matter of being in connection with it. And then for me, the most healing thing is when I feel this energy that comes from people. I'm clairsentient, so it's really difficult. I pick up everybody's shite, and it's difficult for me to be around people. And right now, everyone's hurt, everyone's mourning, everyone's dealing with this massive trauma event that we've been going through. And I sit out in the garden and I really feel the trees more than ever. I really feel the animals around me, and I don't even have to garden. I used to garden to do that, but right now it's just, everything is so electronic. Just sitting next to a tree is so powerful. And if we do this with our kids, if we start actually being parents in a way that is telling our kids, you're going to have outdoor time. Sorry, it's happening. You're putting all those devices down. And we got to somehow get people back into nature, because the thing is, we're being cleaved away from it for whatever reasons. And I don't know, Melissa, what goes on in Canada, but here they have really started to control our access to the public parks, and they're making it more difficult. They started selling, during Obama administration, they started selling off big chunks of that land. And it's all pay to play, and it's become a difficult thing now in my life. It used to be able to just kind of wander. Now it's very monitored, and it may not feel monitored to people that didn't grow up the way I did and using the great parks we have here, because we have amazing parks here, but
Yeah.
it's very monitored now.
Yeah, I was on Vancouver Island, so there was lots of places you could go that were still unmonitored, but I'm sure that will come. It was harder. My son is Gen Z, and he's adult now. He's in university. I still call him and keep tabs on him and try to, I never give up. Like, I don't think that he's not a stupid boy. He's smart. I raised him very meat and potatoes and the nonsense, and his dad's very, not into the woke stuff. So I just keep talking to him and try to keep him talking to me and telling me stuff. And so I kind of know what's going on with him. And that's why I try to influence him and say, go outside. It's really hard. I was that way when I was young. I didn't want to listen to my mom, and I thought I knew everything, but I still try to, hey, you're going to go to the gym. You're going to why don't you get off your computer and take your bus pass and go downtown with your friends and get out with people. And, so I don't know. If you're in a city, it's going to be monitored, and he's in a city right now. But we used to just be able to go on a trail without any monitoring, or out in the middle of nowhere on Vancouver Island. And now that I'm in the States, there's places we could still go, but I don't know very much around. I'm still getting used to being in Utah, so I'm sure there's probably, like, we were at last year we went to what's it called? The national park with the sort of the Mono Arches National Park. It's all a lot of rules, a lot of structure. I understand why, but it was still fascinating just to be out there, and not be at a computer. So
Yeah,
if you're
wonderful.
you're still by nature, you're still out there. And I know, I guess, you just got to make of it what you will. I mean, the whole world's you're gonna have you're gonna have these places that are like little mini concentration camps, but they're going to be called 15-minute cities or whatever. So you're gonna have to try and stay away from it, or make the best of it and challenge yourself to see good things in what you want, even in dire times.
Oh, we got to keep the light on. You have to keep your light has to keep shining. And you've landed in a good place. The Pacific Northwest of the United States, which also includes where you used to live, which is obviously not the United States, is my favorite place. I love
beautiful.
it out here. But when the further inland, like the further towards the Midwest and the East Coast, the more densely packed it is, the more for a lot of people that live nomadic lifestyles, like the van life and all this, because I've done that. The rules are really strict out there. They just don't like you living that lifestyle there. And out here, this is where everyone does it. So there's a whole different sense from the west to the east in the United States. I don't know how much exposure you've had, but you landed in a good place. I can say that. So you are seeing, I think, a better version of it, despite the fact that it's super, well, I don't know, I never had a problem with all the Mormons. They don't like,
I haven't had a problem with the Mormons so far.
I never had a problem. So but
that's because you haven't met Space Jesus yet.
Well, and there are all the, I don't drink really anymore. I never had a problem with drinking. I just don't. It makes me sick. So the dry counties and all that don't really affect me and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be something I would notice.
Well, you can get alcohol here. You just can't, you can't get lottery, can't gamble, and you can't get alcohol on a Sunday.
And I think like marijuana is not legal there and stuff like that.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's more conservative than a lot of places, but it still is a wide open country, and, it's lovely out there. Yeah,
it is really.
I got one more question.
Okay.
And a super chat from Plutarchos. Thank you very much for that. The question is, what is your opinion of cryptids? In particular, the Albatwitch. What comes to your mind first?
Well, I don't know what an Albatwitch is, so
I don't either.
I can't really answer that.
It's like a mini Bigfoot hairy man type thing, Pennsylvania area.
Interesting.
And is it OG? Well, is it old school?
I think so.
I used to do a podcast where we talked about stuff like this, because people would see cryptids in places like England where you thought, well, how is that hiding there? And so I don't know, it could be from another dimension. We could be projecting it. We could create it as a culture. It could really be something that exists in another dimension that just sort of shows up and then disappears. I don't know, but sometimes you're like, especially if it's a big giant ape, you're like, well, how is that wandering around and we're not seeing? There's no evidence, right? Like, that's a good question, but people are still seeing it, so it's got to be something.
Yeah, it's. I agree with all those points. It's hard to say it's this or that. We just don't know what it is. It's a phenomena that people experience. That's all I can say for sure.
I'll probably. Don't go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just saying, with that thing with my Bigfoot encounter, I thought maybe they were like fourth dimensional or something. I mean, it's like, how could they exist? But then in my encounter, I'm like, okay, these things are physical. They are real. Right. They're real. They're stinky and they're real and they're scary. And they have they have some sort of abilities that we don't, because you feel them inside. Your body feels them too. I don't know how to describe it. Scary.
That's fascinating. I might have to do a story or get something up about cryptids. I don't normally focus on cryptids. That's why I was like, I've heard of them, but I've always focused on a lot of ghostly folklore. And I was always interested in, the fact that, are humans still around? Or our relatives visit us after we die? Do we get ghostly omens? Are demons here fucking with us? I guess it's a very human thing for me. So I never really focused on cryptids, but I might have to have a look.
It's interesting. they're rabbit holes that go nowhere, like everything else. So, good luck with that. All right, cool. Well, this has been a great chat. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a quick 2 hours.
No problem. It was great to be back on, and I'm glad I got to catch up with you guys and chat. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And you're always welcome back anytime. Thank you, Nish.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. It's always fun to talk with you. It has felt like forever, and I'm so proud of you for getting this new show going. And I think
you guys will have to come on too. You guys will have to talk about some experiences.
I have a ghost story to tell, so I could tell that.
I got a couple too, girl. But Jerry and I can come on and we'll get spooky with you.
Ooh.
I lived in a legit haunted house for like 15 years. So.
Wow.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back at the end of November with Rufus Cat with Aaron. That should be a good show. I know Nish, you like talking to him.
Oh yeah.
And then we're gonna take December off and we'll be back for next year for the new season 7.
Season 89.
Season 7. We're going into our 7th season.
So
what about, Melissa, let's get your deets out there so people can find
I'm sorry.
you and all that.
I forgot that.
It's okay. Well, the easiest thing is to go to the website. It's ghostlyarchives.com. That's plural, Ghostly Archives. X, like I said, X is very political. So be warned if you follow me there, but the links are on my website. So I'm on X, I believe. I've got a Facebook group, a Facebook page that I just opened up. I'm on TikTok. So I don't really do much there, and Instagram, but yeah, the website has everything. The website also has a thing called The Vault. It's an archive of some of my favorite former stuff on podcasts I did in the past, also former articles. And a lot of times I try to write out my sort of podcasts in a blog post. So I do companion pieces with actual posts sometimes if I have time. So there's a blog running up there as well. So check it out.
All right. And I put all these links are in the description. There you go. Now they're all in the description. And anyone can find them there in the show notes. All right, cool. Thanks. We'll see you guys. We'll be back in a couple weeks. And that's all I got. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, everyone.